Again, thank you on behalf of my colleague Paige McCluskey, myself, Linda Smith. We're happy to welcome Joe Alimo here tonight. If you've been to any of our other presentations, Joe's been with us for several years. He comes as the Director of Financial Aid from Gwynedd Mercy University, and he is a wealth, no pun intended with the money, of knowledge and experience. So, Joe, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
All right, we're awake. We're awake. We had dinner, I know. Did we have our coffee yet or no? All right, I get it. All right, so my name is Joe Alimo. I am the Director of Financial Aid at Gwynedd Mercy University, and I'm happy to be here yet again. It's always fun to be here to have these conversations. I know it's probably not the most exciting topic, but it's a very important topic. As you know, your daughters are moving forward into, hopefully their final year here, and then moving on to college and any other aspects of their lives. Do we have all seniors here, or do we have other juniors and sophomores? All juniors? Okay, all right, good. Well, good. It's glad that we're getting started early with this. So the first thing that we want to make sure we understand is financial aid is there to help our students to achieve the goal to attend the college or the university of their choice. In some cases, it's going to cover everything. In most cases, it's just going to reduce the cost, okay? So as long as we understand that, I think some of the anxiety kind of goes away, and you have a better perspective of what the financial aid process and how it works and why it works and because it works and all that stuff. So the first thing that we want to make sure that the students are doing is, when it's available, we want to make sure that the student is completing what is called the FAFSA application. This is the application that comes from the federal government. It's the free application for federal student aid, okay? I say it is free. So make sure that when our students are looking to complete this application, they are not looking on Googling it or anything like that. They're going to the website, which is studentaid.gov. Okay, remember it is .gov, because I know our students are doing some Googling, and when they Google it, they may find the very first application that appears on their Google search, and sometimes it's a FAFSA.com, and what will happen is it looks like the FAFSA, feels like the FAFSA, and will actually complete like the FAFSA, but as soon as you hit submit, it's going to say, we want you to pay me this amount of money to file this application. And we don't need to do that because this is a free application, okay? The first thing that we want to make sure we're doing is that the student and the parents are requesting what is called a studentaid.gov account, okay? So you're going to go to the same website, studentaid.gov, and you're going to go ahead and create an account, which is basically going to be your identity, your signature for this online application, okay? This application normally is available as of October 1st, but for this year we are told that the FAFSA will be available as of December 1st. And if you've listened to all of the comments that happened for the 24-25 academic year, that the FAFSA has been a nightmare. It was supposed to be out in October, but it wasn't available in October. Then it came out in end of December. We had hiccups. Once it was available, we weren't able to see anything until March. I mean, it was just a nightmare, okay? So this year, the Department of Education has pretty much have decided between the month of October and December, end of November, beginning of December, we're going to do some beta testing. So there's going to be some schools throughout the country that's going to be doing some testing. I know we just got notified a day or two ago that we are going to be testing on November 4th. So we're going to try to gather our students to come onto campus, bring their laptops, hopefully their parents can come, and we can try to get that FAFSA done on that 4th. We think we're going to have the Department of Education with us that will be overseeing this just to kind of see what hiccups are coming up. And hopefully we won't see anything. So as of December 1st, when the FAFSA is available to the vast majority, that there isn't going to be any hiccups, there isn't going to be any issues, and we can move forward through this process without any pain or issues or anything like that, okay? So we want to make sure that, like I said, the student and the parent request what is called a studentaid.gov account. We want to make sure everybody has an account, because as we're going through the process, it's going to determine whose information has to be provided on this FAFSA application. Excuse me. So once you receive that studentaid.gov account, we want to make sure you put it in a safe place. Whether it's going to be saved in the cloud, whether you're going to have it physically, have it somewhere, put it in a folder, have it somewhere where you know where it is at all times, so if you need to use it for other resources and other issues, you have it available and you know what that is. You're going to make sure that you have an email account that's directed to it and your cell phone number. So when you do log into the account, it's going to ask you what you want to send it to, an email or your cell number. They'll give you a code, so you can plug in the code to log into the account, so it knows who you are. Okay, it's an account, it's a signature for that particular person, so you shouldn't be sharing it to anybody else. As you start reviewing the FAFSA application, the FAFSA application is going to help determine all the different aid sources that's available to the student. And that's going to include institutional, federal, and state. Okay? So we want to make sure that we're looking at all our different options as we go through this process. So as we go through the process, the FAFSA has been simplified, so that's where the issue came from for 24-25. It went from like 100 questions to maybe 20 questions. So it kind of simplified the process. So now we're looking at maybe a 15-20 minute process rather than about an hour process, okay? It's very smooth and it's very slick, but with all the issues that was going on, there were so many headaches that it didn't take that 15 minutes that we were hoping that it was going to. So hopefully in 25-26 it is going to have that issue. So what we're going to always ask our student is, once we're ready to go, the student will go in, log in, create their account as I said, and then go ahead and start the application process. So it'll ask for its name, address, social security number, all that information. And then what will happen, the first thing it's going to ask what is called dependency questions. So it's going to ask and determine whether the student is going to be considered independent or dependent. And the questions are going to be asked: has the student been born prior to January 1st of 2000, I believe it's going to be 2022. Has the student been married? Does the student have children that they support? Is the student a veteran? So they're going to be asking a series of questions. If the student answers no to all the questions, they are considered a dependent student, meaning that they have to have parental information on this FAFSA application. Okay? If they answer honestly yes to one of the questions, they are now considered an independent student. Okay? And then from there, they don't require parental information, and then they can go ahead and finalize the FAFSA without any parent information on the application itself. After they've gone through the series of dependency questions, once it's determined on whether they're dependent or independent, if they are dependent, then they will go in and put in a request to invite the parent, or what we call as the contributor, to log into the FAFSA to update their information in the FAFSA, okay? So they will have to have the information of the name of the contributor, which would be the parent, social security number, email address, okay? So we're hoping that when the students are completing this application, that mom or dad or the contributor is sitting with them to go over this information, because I'm sure they're not going to know what your social security number is, and you're not going to give it to them just willy-nilly. They may not know what your email address is, and sometimes they might not even know when your birthday was, okay? The year itself. Maybe the day, but maybe not the year, okay? So maybe we're trying to encourage our students to complete all of this with the parent there, so that when the invite goes out, the parent will be able to see the invite, be able to log right in, and then provide their information and finalize the FAFSA from there, okay? The other thing the student is going to do is they're going to go ahead and the Department of Education is going to request them to approve a consent. And what the consent is basically allowing the Department of Education to go out to the IRS, and if the student has completed a 2023 federal tax return, that's the year that we're going to be using for this application. If they've completed it, the student will consent for the Department of Education to request that information to be loaded into their FAFSA without them having to data enter the information in there. So it makes it a lot quicker to go through this process, okay? And what's gonna happen is if the student does not hit consent and say, no, I'm not gonna do it and just continue on, the Department of Education is very relentless on this. And they're gonna continue to ask it. Are you sure you don't wanna give us consent? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because again, it's much faster and much more safer to have that information transferred over, that you're not making any mistakes. There's no transposing of any numbers or anything to that effect, okay? So we wanna have the students go ahead and hit consent, go ahead and send the information to the parents for the invite, and then on this application, they will go ahead and they can add up to 20 different schools on this application, okay? So for our rambunctious students who are really gung-ho and they're gonna be applying to everybody and their brother, they can add up to 20 different schools, okay? However, I wanna make sure that they're aware that they wanna make sure that their #1 school on the application is a Pennsylvania school. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you want to make sure that they're putting a Pennsylvania school as the very first school on this application. Okay? Once they've put in all the information as far as their schools, they've consent, they've sent the invite to the parents, they'll go ahead and finalize any additional information on there, and then they'll sign it, hit submit. The information goes to the Department of Education and then waits for the parent to log in. Parent receives the invite, they will go in as the parent, they will put in their student's information so all the information matches up. They'll go ahead and also consent to the Department of Education so all of your federal tax information from 2023 gets admitted to the FAFSA, finalize everything, sign it, hit submit. The student will then receive an email that says, hey, everything has been completed. Parent has been submitted, you have been submitted, here is all your information, okay? From there, the student will receive almost we call it a student aid report. They're changing the verbiage right now, but it's basically regurgitating all of the information that's on the FAFSA. We want the student to receive that information, and normally they'll receive it via email. Because of the fact that everything is electronic, make sure that they know what email address they're using and don't use the high school email address. Because eventually, once the student graduates from the high school, they won't have access to that email address, okay? So we want to make sure that they're putting a Gmail account or whatever account they have set up to have that student aid report sent to that email. And I want you to review the information to make sure it is accurate, that there's no numbers that were transposed, everything looks cohesive based on the tax information that was transferred over. And then if everything is correct, file that away. Put it into that folder that you've created, whether, again, it's in the cloud or you've created a physical folder, okay? Because you may need to go back in it to make any corrections or anything to that effect. So you want to make sure that you have access to that information as we move forward through this process. The other thing that the student aid report or the FAFSA is going to provide is that what is called an SAI number, okay? This is a number that's going to come from the Department of Education that's going to kind of determine the aid eligibility for the student. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is what you're going to be paying for the year or anything like that. It's just a guideline that we get from the Department of Education. And this helps us determine what that aid eligibility is. So regardless of what school the student is going to or applying to, that SAI number is always going to be constant. It's never going to be different if they're going to a community college or a private school or a state-related school. It's all going to be basically the same number, okay? That will now go to all the different schools that's listed on the application. If the student only applies to, say, 3 schools, and then later they decided they want to add another school, they could always go back in, hit submit, the information will then go to that school, okay? I always tell students that if they're going to be looking at the different schools that they're applying to, they're not sure if they're going to apply to a particular school, add it onto the FAFSA anyway. You never know what could happen. You know, I always tell students, I mean, who would want to put the University of Hawaii on their application, right? Wouldn't you want to go to school in Hawaii? It'd be a great place to go. I would love to work there, right? So add as many schools as they think they may want to apply to. Even if they don't, it's not going anywhere except for the school, and it just sits there. Nothing happens to the information. Once the schools start receiving the information, we start taking a look at, and we start putting together what is called a cost of attendance, okay, or a budget if you want to use that term. And basically that's going to include tuition and fees, food and housing if they're going to be living on campus, transportation, books and supplies, miscellaneous costs, anything that would pertain to one academic year of school. Now these are costs that are going to be paid directly to the school, which we call direct costs, or indirect costs, which are costs that the schools and the universities will not charge them. We don't charge them for books. We don't charge them for transportation. We don't charge them for any personal expenses, okay? But we want to make sure it's incorporated into that budget or that cost of attendance. So if the student wants to use financial aid to help cover those costs, they can. It's already included in the budget, okay? We then take that information, that cost of attendance, that SAI number that we get from the Department of Education, and then that helps us determine all the aid sources that the student is eligible for, okay? Once we see that the student has been accepted to the college or the university, we then start sending out an award offer. And basically that will explain what the costs are, what the estimated financial aid is going to be, what we're estimating as far as the out-of-pocket cost, and then all the other options that are out there to help cover that gap if there is a gap, okay? If the student applies to 20 schools and gets accepted by all 20 schools, then they're going to be receiving 20 award offers. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what to do once you start receiving those. Okay, so in the award offer, like I said, we're going to put in whatever the costs are going to be for the year, and then we start putting in all the aid sources. So that's going to include, as I mentioned, federal, state, institutional, grants and scholarships, loans, and federal work study. Okay, so it's going to include everything that they will qualify based on the information on that FAFSA application. Okay, it's also going to include any information as far as their acceptance. If they're eligible for a merit scholarship through a private school, it will have that information in there as well. So whatever the admissions office offers the student as far as their admissions, we will make sure that's included in there so everything is combined into one package so that the student knows exactly what we're estimating as far as that out-of-pocket is going to be. Okay? So in there, as I mentioned, we have grants and scholarships, basically the free money. Okay? Anything that the students can use to help pay for educational costs but don't have to be paid back. It's going to include Stafford loans, federal loans, which are funds that come from the Department of Education, but these are funds that you can use for educational costs, but will have to be paid back 6 months after the student stops attending. And that's usually either, once they graduate, or if they decide after, say, a year or two, you know what, this isn't really what's for me, I need to take some time off, trying to figure out what I want to do as I grow up, okay? And then the other aid source that will be included would be what is called federal work study. Now these are funds that come from the Department of Education, and these are funds that do not get credited to any cost through the university. So they're not going to get credited to the tuition costs or the food and housing that the students are living on campus. It's basically funds that the student can earn by getting a part-time job on campus. Okay? Just getting a little part-time job, working maybe 20 hours a week, if that, and they can earn up to whatever the dollar amount is throughout the course of the academic year. So they have some spending money. Okay, and they don't have to keep asking you for money all the time, right? Not a bad idea. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and include all that information, have it subtracted from whatever their cost is. So if they're not going to live on campus, they're only going to be commuting, we will only include tuition and fees minus their financial aid, and then what their out-of-pocket is going to be. Okay, what we're estimating it. And that's the one thing that we want to make sure parents and students are doing, is when they look at those award offers as they're coming through, don't look at the numbers. And I know it sounds funny when I say that, but we want to make sure we're trying to compare apples to apples. Okay? Because of all the schools that they're going to be applying to, the costs are going to be very different. A community college to a private school is completely different as far as what that cost is going to be for tuition and fees. So when you look at it, the private school obviously is going to give them probably more financial aid than the community college. Okay, but that's not fair to the community college if that's where the student wants to go. We want to make sure that you're looking at all the options that the student has and not pinpoint themselves into, well, this is the only one because they're the ones that are giving me the most money, okay? What you want to look at is you want to look at what the bottom line is. What is it going to cost that student and the family for that one academic year of school out of pocket? And for the most part, we're all going to be pretty close because all the schools are competing for the same student, right? We're looking at all of those students and we're trying to get them to accept, apply, and then commit to our schools. As I said, they're applying to multiple schools. And the financial aid offices in this area, we all know each other. We talk regularly, we meet on a regular basis, and we talk about what upcoming events are coming with the Department of Ed, what issues that we're all having, how are we fixing these issues, and things like that. So we know what their costs are. We talk. Admissions doesn't talk, but we talk. Okay? So we know what we're offering, what they're offering, and how competitive we are. And we're trying to be as competitive as possible. Okay? So when they start receiving those award offers, again, don't look at the numbers, look at the bottom line. What's it going to cost out of pocket for that one academic year of school? And then remember that this is only 1 year. We have to do the FAFSA each year for at least 4, maybe 5 years, depending on the program that they're in. And we have to do this year after year after year. So that 1 year, if your incomes have been the same pretty much every year, the financial aid is going to be the same. If it fluctuates, whether you have a commission job where you make a lot of money in 1 year and then the next year you're not making so much, that aid is going to fluctuate. Institutional should always be the same, but federal and state may be a little different. Okay? Now, the reason why I said to make sure that the #1 school on the FAFSA is a Pennsylvania school is because the FAFSA should be, at the latest, completed before May 1st. And the reason for May 1st is because the State Department here in Pennsylvania, our friends and neighbors, FIA, which is a state agency, they also use the FAFSA information to determine the state grant. And their deadline is May 1st. Okay? And the reason why I say the Pennsylvania school is because when they receive the FAFSA, they can determine if the student is going to qualify for a Pennsylvania state grant. We will have the estimate out there because they'll tell us what the information is and determine what the estimates are going to be. So we'll add that onto their accounts. But if there's not a Pennsylvania school on there, they won't determine what that aid eligibility is going to be for the state funds. Okay? So we want to make sure that at least they know that you are possibly going to a Pennsylvania school. So make sure you put that down. And if you have a private school, because they're the ones that get the majority of the funds. If they decide then they're going to go to either a community college or a school out of state, they can always update that information and then the state will make adjustments accordingly. But you at least want to make sure that the initial process for the state is that, yep, they're going to a Pennsylvania school, here's the school, here's how much they may qualify for. And then that process will start, okay? The FAFSA application, we want to make sure we try to do it as early as possible. Obviously, we don't want to do it on December 1st, because I know some families are going to be gung-ho. But you want to make sure that you're reaching out to all the schools they're looking to apply to see what their deadlines are. In some cases, as for us, ours is January 15th. Okay, other schools may be earlier, maybe later. So we want to make sure you're hitting that deadline of the earliest school, and once you've done that, you know you automatically have hit that May 1st deadline. Does that make sense? Okay. So now all the award offers are coming. I know the students are engaged with their conversations with the schools, and I'm hoping that they're narrowing down from 20 list of schools to maybe 2 or 3. Okay? And I know the schools are reaching out, texting them, emailing them, calling them, and whether they answer the phones or not answer the phones. What's going to happen is the schools are going to ask for the student to start making a decision and depositing by May 1st. That's usually the national deadline to deposit. Okay? Have the conversations with your students. Make sure they're aware of the deadlines. Okay? Have the conversation with them as far as the schools themselves. And as you're looking at those award offers, if you're looking at that and there's an out-of-pocket that you're thinking, yeah, there's no way I'm going to cover this or help with this, have that conversation. Okay? Sometimes that reality is in there and parents don't like to have that conversation, that money conversation with students. But have that conversation, as uncomfortable as it is. We try to have it with our families all the time. Okay? We want to make sure that the student is basically taking and finding the school that's best going to fit for them. Okay? Because, as I said, most of the offer letters are going to be pretty close as far as the out-of-pocket. But now it's going to be what's going to be their best fit. What's going to help that student to get the degree, to get that job that they're looking for, and parents, realistically, when you're going to get them out of the house. All right? Exactly. Exactly. I'll tell you a story after this. Okay? So, as I said, May 1st is the deadline to start depositing. So hopefully the students are looking at 1 or 2 schools, kind of determining, going back and forth. The one thing I'm going to tell you, don't pressure them. Okay? They need to make sure that they're making the decision on their own. Okay? Because you don't want the student to deposit and then all of a sudden have buyer's remorse. I've made the deposit. Oh, was this the right thing to do? Now they're second guessing themselves. Okay? What I tell students at this time, between February and May, as you're going through it, do a lot of visits. Do a lot of research on the schools. Visit the schools. do a plus or minus chart. What do you like? What do you don't like? What are you looking for? Okay? Do as much research as you can. I tell students, you always go to the open houses, go to a day where I know we're offering, I just was told this morning, I think they're doing a shadow day on election day, and then I think they'll do one on President's Day, where the students can come onto campus, go to a couple classes, kind of sit in on the class and kind of get an idea of what the atmosphere feels like, okay? Do something like that, okay? Now, when you go to an open house, it's basically the dog and pony show, right? We show you everything that's shiny and new. This is wonderful, right? Go on to campus on a regular day. Make sure there's students on campus. Okay, don't go on a day that the universities are closed, but just kind of walk onto campus. Get a feel for it. How does it feel? Does it feel the same as when you're on as an open house? And I tell this story, and I'm not sure if admissions really appreciates this or not, but when you're on campus, go into the admissions house unannounced. And just say, hey, I was in the neighborhood. Can you give me a tour? And see how they react to that. Okay? Because that's going to tell you how the student is actually going to feel. Okay? Because in an open house, everybody's smiling, everybody's happy. But when you walk in unannounced, are they still that happy? Are they still smiling? Because if they are, then that's a school to consider. But if they're miserable, why would you want to go? Because then you're going to get that feel that the rest of the school is going to be like that. Okay? Make sense? Okay? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. They want you to come in and talk with them. Because the more conversations you have, the more information you're going to get and the student's going to get, and they'll get a better feel on what school is going to be that best fit. Okay? So don't pressure them. If it gets close to May 1st and they still haven't made the decision, that's okay. Call the schools that they're interested in and ask for an extension. Hey, I'm still going, I'm on the fence, I'm not sure, can you give me another week? Sure. Okay? And if the student does make a decision, puts the deposit down, let the other schools know. Because what's going to happen is those schools are still going to call. And then what's going to happen is then the students aren't going to pick up the phone. They're not going to respond to the text messages. But if the student calls those schools and say, hey, look, I made a decision. I'm not coming to your school as much as I would like to. I'm going to another school. It was a better fit. Okay, thank you. They'll take them off the list so they don't continue to call them. If the admissions office doesn't know, they're going to keep calling. Okay, and that's where the students may get, okay, did I get buyer's remorse? They made that decision, done, and done. We made the deposit, we move forward from there. Okay? All right. Now, the student has deposited, all excited. June comes, graduation parties, all the excitement happens. July comes, 4th of July hits, and then right after 4th of July, my phone blows up because bills now have hit the streets, right? And all the conversations that we were having with these families on what that out of cost is going to be and all the options they have, reality kicked in, and they've forgotten everything we've talked about. Okay? So my phone blows up. Joe, what do we do? Joe, what happened? Joe, what's this? What's this? Okay, breathe. Remember, based on our estimates, this is what that out-of-pocket looks like, right? Yeah. Okay, now, here are the options. First and foremost, Bill is due on a certain date, pay the bill. Here's the balance, pay it off. Okay? You look at that balance, you say, yeah, it's not going to happen. We can't do it that way. Schools offer a payment plan. With that, they can do it within a 5-month period, 4-month period, a 6-month period, depending on the schools. And you can take that remaining balance and divide it into monthly installments. Okay? There's usually a one-time processing fee. It's usually $35 to $40, somewhere around there. And then all they do is extract it out of whatever account you set up. Done. Okay? I have parents who look at that and say, yeah, that's not going to happen. So the next option is parents can apply for what is called a Parent Plus loan. This is a loan that comes from the Department of Education that parents can apply for their dependent students to help cover any remaining balances that they may have. Okay? This loan is based on credit, and it is in the parent's name. So you can't transfer it to a student or anybody else. Okay? You can apply for whatever that remaining balance is, and you can do it for the full academic year. You don't have to do it semester by semester. Okay? Once the parent applies for the loan and hits submit, they will put in a request for the dollar amount. As soon as they hit submit, they will either get an approval or a denial. If they get approved, they are sent to complete what is called the master promissory note, to promise the Department of Ed that you will pay this back. We will get the certification request, certify the loan, and send it back to the Department of Ed. If the parent gets denied for whatever that reason is, the parent has two options. First option is obviously calling the Department of Ed and find out why you were denied. And sometimes it could be as silly as 12 years ago, you had a credit card from a department store that no longer exists, and somehow they had $1.250 left out there and a balance that you've never paid. Okay? You can take care of it, reapply, get approved, done. If the parent chooses not to go through that process, then what will happen is we will get that plus loan denial, and we can add an additional loan onto the student's account to help cover any remaining balances. Okay? That's an option. The last option is that we know that sometimes parents may say, you know what, this is not my education. This is my student's education. So I want them to have more skin in the game than me. So students can apply for what is called a private loan or alternative loan. This is a loan that comes from private lenders. Sallie Mae, PNC Bank, Citizens Bank. There's a couple others out there that I am not remembering at this point. But those are the lenders that are out there. Okay? The student can apply. This loan is also based on credit. So the student will have to apply with a cosigner, because I know they're not going to have either any credit or not enough established credit. They will apply with the cosigner. The student gets a pre-approval. We get the notification. We certify the loan based on the dollar amount that they're requesting, and we hopefully they're applying for the full academic year if they need to. Okay? If you've put together or a family member has a 529 plan for a student, they can use that to help cover those costs. Okay? Depending on how much money is in that will determine how much money you want to use per year, per semester. For the 4 years, that's entirely up to you. You can have that 529 plan cover the entire academic year and then borrow loans in year 2, 3, or 4. You can take that amount and divide it into 4 years, 8 semesters. That's entirely up to you. What you need to do, though, is you need to reach out to the organizers of the 529 plan and ask them how you can extract money out of the account. Normally they'll say, we need a copy of the bill. Send me a copy of the bill and then tell us how much you want to withdraw and we'll send it to the school. Okay? You can have that set up, which means that you can do a combination of a lot of different things. So in other words, if you have a little bit of a 529 plan, you can use that to help cover some of the balance. You can maybe take out a small plus loan or a private loan, and then maybe do the payment plan for the remaining portion of it. Okay? So you're not borrowing so much, and you have money to help cover any remaining balances. Okay? Does it make sense? Okay. All right. Last thing, I want to tell you this story. So the one thing that I want you to do, and this happens all the time, at least once or twice a year, okay? Remember that the FAFSA is the student's financial aid, not mom and dad's financial aid, okay? Have them part of the process. I mentioned earlier, have the student start the FAFSA application, do the invite, and then you go in and supply your information in there, okay? And the reason why I say this is because every once in a while, as we go along through the course of the semester, excuse me, what may happen is the student has a balance, didn't take care of that balance, and now they have a hold on their account. And they can't register for the next semester. So when they try to register, it gives them a hold. They say, oh, can't do it. Who is the first person they're going to call? And it's not going to be Ghostbusters. Okay? They're going to call mom and dad. And they may be crying and say, I can't register for classes, what's going on? So you're going to go ahead and turn around and say, okay, you know what? Go talk to Mr. Alimo. Go find out. So they come into my office, sometimes in tears, sometimes not, and they tell me I can't register for courses. Well, why not? Well, I don't know. I look at their account and I can say, well, you got a balance. What was your plan to cover this balance? I don't know. So now I may have a three-way conversation, mom on the cell phone, student in front of me crying, trying to figure this all out. And again, I go back to, we've given you an estimate, we've sent you the bill, here is the balance, what was the plan? Have them part of that process. The more they know, the better off they are, not only just at college level, but in life in general, right? Again, you want them out of the house, okay? Last thing, the day that you drop your student off, when they move in, that first day, right? You're all excited, a little teary-eyed. You move them in, you get them all settled, you may have a little cry, and then you go. Okay? The first place you're going to go on the way home, don't go home first, the first place is either Home Depot or Lowe's. Buy new locks, change the locks to the house, because I'm going to tell you this right now, they will come back. Okay? My wife and I, we had two girls. We had a 6-bedroom house. When they got into college, done, right? We're empty nesting. We downsized to a 3-bedroom. Both girls came back. One came back with her boyfriend. And they all were living in a house, a 3-bedroom house, trying to figure that one out. Not fun. Change the locks. Okay? You could probably write that off on your taxes as far as educational costs, right? Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? Does it make sense? Yes?
If you already have, I already did this one, so if you already have a FAFSA account.
Yes.
Do I have to set up another one?
No. As long as you've been using it, you're okay. Your daughter will then have to make sure that she has one.
So she'll set one up.
She'll have one, you already have one, you can still use that, as long as you've been continuously using it, yes.
Okay, and my second question, do you use the FAFSA for grad school too?
Yes, yes. At that point, the student will become independent. So it's only strictly the student's information, and all they're gonna qualify as far as federal aid would be loans. Grants and scholarships and all that stuff are pretty much gone. It's usually loan money for grad school.
So she'll still have to.
She'll complete that, yep.
grad school, and then I have to start over for my younger.
Correct, correct, yeah. And you may have multiple students in the household too, that are going to school at the same time,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, as far as state schools go, do they have, like, merit, institutional merit, or is it?
Usually state schools, they may not have merit scholarship, but they may have scholarships, endowed scholarships that they may offer, okay? They do qualify for federal state aid. There may be some scholarships that the students may qualify through the school itself, but yes. And that will also may determine based on the information from the FAFSA. Yes? In the back.
How does the CSS profile play into all? Just got notice about that being open October 1st.
Right, yeah, so the CSS profile is a separate application that comes through College Board. It is an application, usually the private schools will be requesting it, okay? They use that information to help determine institutional funds. Not merit or anything like that, but any of the endowed scholarships or scholarships that the students may qualify for, okay? It's a little bit more intense than the FAFSA application, and there is a fee for that application. So for the first application, I believe it's $25, and then the second time, if you need it for a second school, it's $16, I think, in that range, okay? Now, there may be some CSS profile waivers that you can ask to see if there's some available that you can potentially not have to pay that $25, but those are primarily for the private schools to use for their institutional funds.
So it's per school.
Correct.
Per student.
Correct. Yep. Yes?
Should both parents have an account?
I would say yes, and the reason why I say that is because what's going to happen as the student goes through the FAFSA application, and I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, there is what is called a parent wizard, and that's probably the best term I can use for this process. And it's basically going to ask some general questions about the parents. So they know who the parent is that is going to be the contributor and which ones are going to be asked to be on there, okay? If you are married, filing jointly the tax returns, then theoretically you only need the one parent to have the account information so they can go in and log it in and then hit consent, and then all that information comes over. But if the parent or if there's a step parent involved and they filed separate tax returns, then both of them have to be invited, both of them have to consent, so all that information gets put into the FAFSA. If that makes sense. But I would have it anyway, just in case. If you don't need it, no big deal. But what happens is it usually takes about 3 to 4 days to get that process done so they can go through the proper channels. So what happens is if the student hits the information and sends out the invite, and the parent gets it and the second one does as well, but they don't have their account, that's going to delay that process. Okay? So it can't hurt to have it, just to have it. Yes, sir.
Just a probably stupid question here, but regardless of your financial need or anything, everyone should complete it fast.
I would say yes. Worst case scenario,
They say no.
student qualifies for only a federal Stafford loan through the Department of Ed, and that's it. You don't have to accept it. Okay? Even though we offer it, the student does not have to accept it. Okay? They still qualify for any merit scholarship, anything like that. Student does not have to complete the FAFSA for that. Okay? But any of the other endowed scholarships that schools will offer, they do use the FAFSA information to see if they do qualify. So it's always a good thing to have it done. Again, if that's worst case scenario, they get the loan, you don't have to take it.
Okay.
No harm, no foul. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Okay, just to the point of the scholarships.
Yes.
The merit is based off of your finances,
The merit is based on academics.
academics, so they're going to review your academics and they'll give you, and these endowed scholarships, will they have to apply for them, or will the school say?
Depends the school. So what happens is when the student applies to the college or the university, okay, they get SAT scores, ACT scores if they're doing that. They'll look at transcripts. They'll look at all this information from the high school. Make the determination if they're accepted, and they may qualify in the private school setting, they may qualify for a merit scholarship. And that scholarship is good for all 4 years, as long as they maintain a certain GPA, maintain certain restrictions through the university, okay, or the college, right? The endowed scholarships are funds that come from private donors to the university or to the college that says, okay, I want to create a scholarship for students who have blue hair, green eyes, and purple toenails, okay? So any of those students that fit that criteria would be eligible for that scholarship, that endowed scholarship. And that's where we go through, okay? In some cases, schools may say, you know what, you need to do an application, put in the scholarships that you think you're going to qualify for, and then submit it. We'll go ahead and review it. For us, we go through the scholarships, whatever the criteria is, and then we fit it into the students, whoever is eligible for it, based on that criteria. Okay, so it's really going to depend on the school, on whether they have to do an application or not. Okay? What else? Yes, sir.
Is there an opportunity after they're accepted to leverage one institution's acceptance to another?
You could. I'm not gonna say no, but you could. You may get something. You may not. It's really gonna depend the school. I can tell you this: we basically come full out with the best package that we could offer based on the information that's on the FAFSA. We don't hold any money back, but not to say that we've had students who said, you know what, I'm looking at this school, they're giving me this, and this is what my out-of-pocket looks like that. What can you do? We'll take a look at it and say, well, all right, well, maybe we do have something we can offer, or we can say, thanks for playing the game, this is it, make a decision. Can't hurt, but I can tell you most schools are really pretty much going to go out with their best foot forward. You're going to have some schools that may hold some back for those students who are looking to appeal and looking for additional funding. Okay. Yes, sir, you had a...
I was going to ask a similar question to that as far as negotiable, but the other thing I was going to ask you is, are there particular loans you would suggest to steer away from? Because I remember talking to somebody before, them saying like, yeah, you don't want to go with these certain loans. I don't remember exactly what they would.
Yeah, it really depends on what your situation is. I can tell you, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, with the Parent Plus loan, the rate right now is a fixed 9.083. Okay, it's a little high, right? It's a little high.
Yeah.
With the private loans, it's going to depend on what your credit score is. It can go from 4% to, I think, 7 or 8%, okay? So it's gonna really depend on what you feel comfortable with. You can do a combination of, let's take a look at it. Now I know for our school, we do have a list or a site, a link that students can go in and take a look at all the different lenders that are out there and do a compare and contrast, okay? And then once they determine, okay, maybe I do the private loan, here's what the options are, and we go from there, okay? It's really gonna depend on the family and how comfortable they feel with that particular loan.
Are most fixed as far as?
Most
the
of them
rate?
are fixed.
Okay.
The private loans will have some variable rates. The Department of Ed with the Plus loan, it's always a fixed rate, and that changes year to year depending on what the interest rates are for that current year. But it is always fixed. The private lenders do offer variable rates as well. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, the Parent Plus loan, after the child is out of school, can they can assume that loan in the parent?
The student?
Yeah.
No.
The
It is always going to be in the
stays-
parent's name and their response. Now, you can make it a deal with the student to say, look, I took this out for you, you got to pay it. But remember, if they don't pay it, it's on your credit report. But yes, it's always going to stay in that parent's name. It's never going to go into the student's name. Yes, ma'am.
So just looking at if you have multiple children going at one time
Yes.
and take these Parent Plus loans,
Mhm.
and they're on your credit score, like, I mean, essentially, it's your debt to credit ratio.
Correct.
Like, would that hurt?
It might,
Okay.
depending on what else you have out there.
Okay.
It might. I mean, I've had, because of my kids, when they went to school, I took out plus loans for each of them. And I had multiple loans, but I mean, I was approved for it. But again, depends on your credit to debt ratio. Yes, ma'am?
For financial aid merit, whatever you're talking about, is there any benefit to getting an application in early rather than later? Like, is it
No.
money run out kind of thing?
No, that, for merit scholarships, it never runs out. It's all gonna be based on academic. So it has nothing to do with FAFSA or financial aid or anything like that. It's just basically their academic. So, you know, the better the student, the higher the merit scholarship is going to be.
No, I meant applying.
Right, no,
to
it
school, not
doesn't
necessarily.
matter, doesn't matter, no, because they're still gonna get the same dollar amount regardless if they, you know, they apply early or they apply late. They still are qualified based on their grades.
And typically merit comes with the acceptance letter, right?
Correct.
And then, so you kind of know what you're.
Right, you'll have at least an idea, right, you'll have at least an idea of at least maybe a third of what it's gonna cost out of pocket based on tuition fees and all that stuff.
And then the financial aid can kick in after that. Like you
Correct.
said earlier, though, they'll know obviously that the merit carries.
Right, right. The one thing I would tell you to do is if the student is looking at, again, multiple schools, and I know it's a little early at this point in time, right, to do the FAFSA, it's not available until December 1st. If the student has an idea of what schools they're applying to, go to their websites. On the financial aid page, they do have what is called a net price calculator. Okay, now just remember that it is designed for 24-25 academic year. We still have not gone through 25-26 yet. Okay, we're still in this current semester or this current year. So go in there, plug in the numbers like you would normally do on the FAFSA. Okay, and then it will give you an idea of what that award package is going to look like. It's not going to be set in stone, but it's at least a guide to say, okay, this school may be giving me a dollar amount of X. This school would give me a dollar amount of Y. Okay? So you have an idea, so when the FAFSA does get submitted and you get that award offer, we're going to be pretty close. And then you'll have an idea so that it's not going to be a sticker shock when you actually get those offer letters, right? And then you can have that conversation even starting before that FAFSA gets completed and say, hey, look, I know that, you know, this school looks promising, this school looks like this, here's what they may qualify for. Now, just remember that it may only be just merit scholarship and possibly federal or state. It may not go into any endowed scholarships or anything like that, but it'll at least give you a general idea of what that aid source is going to look like for the year. And then again, depending on what happens next year, it may be a little higher, maybe a little bit lower, because again, we're looking at now, are we keeping the merit scholarships the same? Are we increasing the merit scholarships? Are we increasing tuition and costs or things like that? So again, remember, this is only 24-25. So it may be close, but at least gives you a general idea. What else?
Can I
That's it?
just, let
Go.
everyone know what I went through?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My first child went to Gwen at Mercy, and she was on a basketball scholarship, so that kind of played itself out, which was good. Now, my second child, when you were saying we're gonna have the child take the brunt of the payment, I went for the private loan because I thought I don't wanna have a Parent Plus loan. So we got a private loan for him, and at that same time, the rates were low, so we refied my house, but I had to pay off that private loan into my mortgage.
When you went to
just
refi.
know that, like, that
Right.
private loan, it was under my name, so now that's in my mortgage.
Right.
So my third child, I do have, well, I was at Temple's, I worked
Okay.
at Temple's, so
Okay.
she had a lot of tuition off, so I didn't
Right.
have to
Good.
pay as much,
Yeah.
but I did get a Parent Plus loan with
Okay.
her.
Okay.
So just to know, I just wanna get you guys to know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories and options out there, you know.
I was
so.
not aware of that when I
Yeah.
was refinancing.
Yeah, and again, based on what they, you know, they may need to do that if you're trying to refinance a loan or something like that, or
Yeah.
a mortgage, yeah. Yes,
Does everybody get offered the Stafford loan
yes,
from Fed?
everybody will get a Stafford loan, yes.
Does that amount differ based on need?
No, it's all based on grade level. So for a freshman, the maximum they can borrow is $5,500. A sophomore, it's $6,500. Junior and senior, it's $7,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
again, we got to remember it's not a lot of money, but and then also you got to remember with the Stafford loan also does help the student establish credit because now there's a loan in their name, right? So we want to make sure that if they are going to borrow it, be sensible. You don't have to borrow the full amount. I mentioned earlier that if that's all they get, they don't have to take it. They don't have to borrow it. But just be careful that, again, whatever they borrow, they're going to have to pay that all back, right? And again, depending on what their program of study is, will determine, you know, if they're going to get that job right away, or are they going to be able to afford to live on their own, and or they're going to be living in your basement for, you know, 2 or 3 years, or what have you. So, you know, be careful with that. Yes?
So the Stafford is you start to pay 6 months after,
After they stop attending.
Yeah.
and that's typically in the kid's name.
Correct. That's always in the student's name. Always in the student's name, yes.
But there's a limitation to that.
Right, yeah, depending on the grade level. Yep.
And what's the current interest rate on Stafford?
The Stafford loans is a fixed 6.53%.
Okay.
Not horrible.
Or that fluctuates?
No, that's fixed. That's fixed. Now, if they borrow a loan the next year, that interest rate will be different.
Right, so I mean.
Yeah.
But it always that loan itself would always have that rate for the life of the loan,
Okay.
unless they consolidate or refinance it or what have you. Yes, then they can.
So basically, if they take Stafford out every year, 6 months after they graduate and left school, all those independent loans then are on their books to pay off.
Correct, yeah. What'll happen is the loans will then get sent to a loan servicer through the Department of Education. And then from there, because then they'll all be at one spot, even though they're individual loans, they will have one monthly payment amount. And then they can talk to the servicer to see what payment will fit their income and their needs.
It's 6 months in the past, it's 6 months regardless, it's not if they take the loan freshman year to pay after their senior year, really, it's 3 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year.
As long as they're,
The loan
yeah.
kicks in regardless.
As long as they're continuously enrolled at least 6 credits, they don't have to make any payments on the loan. So if they go for 4 years for undergrad and then go another 2 for masters, as long as they're continuous, the loans don't go into repayment. However, you can make payments on these loans at any time without penalty. Okay, so as they're in school, if you happen to win the lottery, you can pay off those loans.
Or you can pay the interest.
Or you can pay the interest, yes. I mean, you can always make payments on the loans without penalty. And you can always pay them off early without penalty. Somebody else had a hand up. Yes?
So does 529, that count as like the student's asset?
Yes. Well, it depends on whose name is it in. So if it's in the student's name, that the student has access to it, it's a student access. If it's in the parent's name, then it's their asset.
So
If it's in grandma and grandpa's name, it's nobody's asset.
So if we had the 529 and we potentially used it, up by the end of freshman or sophomore year.
Yep.
That would then reduce our assets and potentially
Right.
increase the, I'm not sure, it's not.
Possibly, yeah, depending on how much money that's in there, yes, yes.
So would it make more sense to kind of use it before you start borrowing?
Again, it depends on how much money is there, right? I mean, if you have $20,000 in there, do you do $5,000 a year for the 4 years? Does that help? Again, depends on what that out of pocket is gonna look like, right? So if it's a say it's $5,000 for out of pocket for that full year, obviously the 529 plan covers it, you're done, right? If it's $10,000, you can use that, you have half of the balance left over for the year. Then you may be able to do a payment plan for the rest of it, or take out a loan for that small amount, or maybe use the 529 for the whole thing. It's entirely up to you. Whatever feels comfortable, because you gotta remember, it's not only just this student. If you have other children coming up, what's the plan for them, right? Because you don't want to just blow everything on the one student and then you're stuck with the other 2 or 3 or 4. You want to make sure what's good for not only the student, but for the family itself as well. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Is there a max that a student can take in a private loan?
Yes, it's up to whatever the cost of attendance minus any financial aid that they're eligible for. So in other words, if their cost is $50,000, they get $30,000 in financial aid. They can borrow up to $20,000 in that private loan if they needed to.
What if the numbers were higher and they needed to pay $60,000? Could they take a $60,000 loan?
If they get approved for it, yes.
Yeah.
They get
So there
approved.
is no max, like general max?
Well, the max is the cost of attendance. So whatever that cost is, they can't go above that cost. If that makes sense. So in other words, your example is the cost of attendance is $100,000. They're getting $40,000 in aid. They have to take out $60,000 to help cover costs. Yes.
I'm going crazy.
Yeah. No, I get it. I understand.
But that would be, they would have to co-sign.
Right. Well,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
Any of the private loans. Okay. So if they have, say, $10,000 in SAGE funds, right? For the 4 years, it's $250 each year, right? We offer $1,000 in institutional money. So we will make up, or we'll use $1,500 in SAGE money of that dollar amount. However, that same example, if it's $2,500 a year in SAGE, and we offer $10,000 in merit or institutional each year, the SAGE dollars don't get used.
Is that how all the schools do it, or that's how you do it?
All the schools do it.
Okay.
All the schools do it, yeah. So what I would do before you assign it to a school, see what other options you can use those funds.
Okay.
Okay? Because again, depending on the school, if they offer more, that money doesn't get used.
Okay.
Okay? What else?
What are SAGE funds?
What are SAGE funds? These are funds that, again, it's like a rewards program. The student signs up for this program online, and I don't know how they get them. I don't know if they use it with their credit cards and all that stuff, and they get
Yeah, it could be
points.
a variety of things, like I think we get some through like our dental plan.
Okay.
And we get some through like fundraising things that they did at the grade school, like
Okay.
it was. But I think you can sign up online and you might be able to.
Yeah, you can sign up online. You go onto Sage, I think it's sage.com. You can log into that, create an account. But again, it's a way of accumulating points, and then those points you can use for educational purposes. But again, if the schools offer more in institutional than the SAGE dollars don't get used. And I don't know what else they can use those funds for. So, I only look at it for our school and what the schools are using it for. I don't know if there's any other application for those points. Yes.
I know there are other sources for scholarships that kids are applying for.
Yep.
When the financials come out on acceptance and the package is taking into account those things, is it possible that those scholarships may not have been awarded by the time
As far as institution, as far as like endowed scholarships?
I guess private scholarships?
Well, it depends on the private scholarship. So if we have endowed scholarships, which we do, when we send out the award offers, we don't have endowed scholarships in there, okay? So basically what's gonna happen with our endowed scholarships, once we have a clarification of how much money we have in each fund, then we start going first to all our returning students who were eligible for those scholarships the year prior. We want to make sure that they're getting it for all 4 years that they're eligible for that scholarship, okay? Once that's done, Then we determine if there's any money available. Now we start going out to freshman or first year students. And with that, based on the criteria, we automatically add it to their accounts and offer additional funds from there. If there's a private scholarship that they're applying to other than the university, they should start looking at applying now, okay? One of the websites that they could go to if they haven't gone to already is a website called fastweb.com. FASTWEB.com. This is a free private scholarship search. The student will actually create an account, and basically in the account they're going to be asked likes and dislikes, male, female, religious background, hobbies, as I said before, blue hair, green eyes, and purple toenails. With that profile, they will get a list of scholarships that will hit the profile. It's up to them now to apply to those scholarships. And with that application, what else do they need? Do they just need the application? Do they need an essay? Do they need both? Make sure the students hit the deadline, and then the student may qualify for those funds. Not guaranteed, because this is a national search, but at least it's something that they may apply for. And then if they get a scholarship outside of the school, send a copy of that letter to the school so they're aware of it. Because what we do, and most schools do this, we'll add it onto the student's account as an estimated fund, right? It'll still show up on the bill, which will lower that out-of-pocket cost. And then when we physically receive the money, because the money usually comes to the schools, we will credit it to the account based on the semester that they're applying to. Sure. Yes?
Does the student need to know what school they're choosing in order to use the FastWeb
No.
funds?
No, because what'll happen...
So it just kind of gets banked until...
Yeah, what'll happen is if the student gets accepted for that particular scholarship, say it's $1,000, then the scholarship organization or FastWeb will say, okay, what school is it going to? And then the student will say, okay, it's going to this school or whatever, and you give them all the address so that they can send out the checks to the schools. And usually the checks don't come out until June or July, so you got time. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the CSS profile,
Yep.
which is additional
Mhm.
requests usually from private schools.
Yes.
Right, for financial, okay. And you said it was more robust, it had a little bit more, I guess, than FAFSA, not a sheet.
Yes, it's more, they're gonna ask you for money that you have under your pillow, behind the back room, that you've hidden for many years and you've never seen before. They're gonna ask you a lot of in-depth questions as far as your income. Yeah, that goes into a lot more detail than the FAFSA does. Yes, ma'am?
And when they're doing that, they're gonna want to know the savings on parents' end plus the child savings they have, or 529, is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
So even though the FAFSA is gonna be in the parent's name, they're still gonna want to know savings for the child.
Well, and the FAFSA will ask for savings for the child as well.
Good.
Yeah, it does. It does both. But they go into more detail. They go into more detail as far as stocks, bonds. If the parents are divorced, they go, even though the primary parent who is on the FAFSA and all that stuff, they will ask for income and asset information for the divorced parent as well. They go into more detail on this because this is an application, like I said, private schools will use this to help disperse their endowed scholarships. And they may have larger endowed scholarships than some other schools do. So that's an application, and that's a way to help determine who has that need so they can determine who is eligible for them. So it's a little intense. It's more intense.
Is there, I mean, do you have to claim everything? Or is there things that you...
On the CSS profile,
Yeah.
I think you have to claim everything. And now whether or not they're going to check it, I have no idea. We don't do the CSS profile, so I don't know how
I was gonna
in-depth
ask
it
you,
is.
because you're a private school, so you...
We don't request it.
But, so it's not every private?
No, not everybody.
not
I
at
can
all.
tell you Villanova for sure does.
Yes.
Okay.
I know Villanova.
Yes.
So is that something that we'll find out if she applies?
Yes.
To a private school that requires
Yes.
it, that'll be on the checklist? Hey,
They will tell you, yep, do this, do this, do this.
Can I find out beforehand?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
you can reach out to school. Like I said, Villanova, I know they said that the CSS profile is out yesterday.
And
Yeah,
so-
October
That's-
1st.
That's
So-
available, but the FAFSA is not due until December 1st.
Right.
Yeah, I thought College Board sent that if anyone registered for an ACT or SAT for College Board, that it went out automatically. to everyone.
Oh, and that could very well be, that could very well be.
We're asking for the same thing as you get this email, I guess.
Yeah, that could very well be. Again, we're not a CSS profile school, so I don't know when that's, but I've been told that October 1st is the application is already available.
And can't they go on the College Board site for CSS profile? You can get a
Yes.
list of schools.
Yeah,
that
they should have a
demand it,
list of schools that request it.
that request it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
What else? These are good questions.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we're done, right? Okay. I do have business cards, so if you want to grab a business card, you're more than welcome to do that. Just remember, I can give you as much information as you want about Gwinnett Mercy. I cannot talk to you about Penn State or Villanova or Temple or any of those schools, okay? I can give you general questions, general information. Okay, I can kind of direct you on where you need to go, but specifically for a school, you need to talk to that school again, because I don't work for them, so I can't talk about them, okay? If you have any questions, concerns, send me an email. Just remind me where we spoke, right? And then what we'll do is we can either, I can just email you back, we can set up a Zoom call. If you happen to be close to campus, you can come into the office and have a conversation. There's a number of ways that we can have a conversation to kind of go over any questions that you may have. All right, so feel free to grab a card. Thank you for coming. Good luck. I hope it works out.